Let's listen to former educator Don Hislop, now a baseball historian and writer. He will tell us how Charles "Pop" Smith and Fred Lake earned their baseball stripes.
I came across the names of Fred Lake and Charles Smith by becoming interested in doing research on baseball and writing for the website Red Sox Nation out of Boston. I was reading a book by a man named Tim Gay from Virginia who had written a biography on Tris Speaker. And in the book, he mentioned that Fred Lake, a Nova Scotian, gave Tris Speaker his first break in the major leagues. I had no idea about Fred Lake. I had no idea where he was from or that he was a Nova Scotian. And I decided to put feelers out. I had a few responses. And one of the responses came back, have you ever heard tell of Charles "Pop" Smith? Perhaps the most famous Nova Scotian ever to play Major League Baseball. And I replied, no, I had never heard of him either. And from that point on, I made it my job or my hobby of interest, I guess, to find out as much as I could about these two gentlemen.
All right, and here we go. Charles "Pop" Smith, born in Digby in 1856, holds every offensive record for a Nova Scotian who has ever played in baseball's major leagues. Of all Canadians who've ever played the game, and that includes offensive stars of recent memory like Larry Walker and Terry Poole, Smith is ranked third in stolen bases, fourth in triples, sixth in runs scored, eighth in hits, and eighth in games played. The problem in lack of recognition for Charles "Pop" Smith is that no one has heard of him because he played in the late 19th century, and many people think the majors started in 1903. Not the case.
Charles Smith played 11 seasons of Major League Baseball for 10 different teams. He wasn't a great hitter. His career average was only .224. But he was an exceptional fielder. He led the American Association in fielding percentage 2 years. He was chosen as the top fielding infielder in 1895 when he played for Columbus in the American Association. He's been elected into the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. And in 1981, the Globe and Mail selected him as the all-time best Canadian-born second baseman to have played Major League Baseball.
Don, do you think a distant relative to Lenny McDonald? Perhaps. You see that stash there? The Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame has ranked Smith as the finest Canadian-born second baseman in baseball history. He moved with his family to Boston in the early 1870s. At 18, with little time for schooling, he became a laborer by day, an amateur baseball player by night. And in 1876, he began his career with the Binghamton, New York Crickets, an independent professional team. Over the next 12 years of pro ball, he played with 10 different teams, one of which was the Cincinnati Reds of the National League in 1880, his first shot at the major leagues. In 1882, the Columbus, Ohio Buckeyes joined the American Association and added Smith to their roster. When the 1882 World Series was played in Columbus, he was recognized as a player with great knowledge of the sport and was well known by the management of the two participating teams, the Chicago White Stockings and Cincinnati Reds. So he was chosen to umpire the two-game series, and newspapers were impressed by such an impartial official, saying he, quote, umpired in splendid style. In Columbus in 1883, he achieved his career-high batting average, .262, and he hit his first home run, and his 17 triples led the American Association. The next season, his batting average dipped slightly, but he hit a career-high 6 home runs while leading the league in assists by a second baseman. 1885, he joined Pittsburgh and played 5 seasons with them. His batting average was close to his career high, and he consistently led second basemen in putouts and assists. In 1886, stolen bases were recorded for the first time, and he led his team in that category too. In those years, he earned his nickname Pop, and you see he wore that mustache that he kept neatly groomed during the first half of his career. After he turned 30 years of age, his signature facial hair became bushy, making him look a bit older beyond his actual years.
The nickname Pop sort of summarizes the way his fellow teammates looked at him. He was looked at as a leader. He was admired for his, I believe, knowledge of the game. He was even asked to umpire a couple of times early in his professional career. And he was not only a second baseman, he played shortstop and actually led the league in fielding percentage at shortstop. He also played a little bit of outfield, a little bit of third base, and actually pitched a few innings as well when the need arose for his team.
In 1890, as captain of the Boston Bean Eaters, later the Braves, Pop Smith drew these rave comments from the baseball Bible, The Sporting News. They wrote, "He knows every point of the game, is thoroughly familiar with the tricks of the business, and is quick to take advantage of every play that will help his side win." Smith led the Bean Eaters in stolen bases, walks, triples, and total bases that year. He ended his major league career in 1891 after playing over 1,000 games, the most professional games ever played by a Nova Scotian. He continued his career in the minors for teams in Omaha, St. Paul, Fort Wayne, Rochester, Providence, even Toronto. Before his death at age 70, in 1927, he had settled in Boston, married, and had a child, and he worked as a motorman on the street railway in Boston. Charles Pop Smith had a lifetime batting average of just .224, but in the dead ball era, hit 24 home runs, good for a little guy playing second base, had 169 stolen bases in the 6 years they were recorded during his career, and would have won a ton of gold gloves for fielding excellence had that award been presented in his day. And tonight we heard Don Hislop's well-researched material on a man he calls a forgotten Nova Scotian. Well, from now forward, we will recognize the status he held in Major League Baseball before the start of the 20th century. Charles Pop Smith is a member of the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame, and now tonight, Charles Pop Smith, an honored member of the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame.